Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown, INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Renew now, drives in low, throws up a shot. It doesn't go. Tipped up and in by Anthony Leal. Indiana takes the lead.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard on this Wednesday. It means we've made it halfway through the week, and it's been a pretty spectacular week. You've got to say the weather has been outstanding as we trudge along here in this August. It has been easy going, easy sledding here this month with the weather being outstanding. I'm sure the football players are loving this, whether high school, college, or whatever, pros, NFL, the Colts. Getting practice in the morning, it is crazy to have this kind of weather. So congratulations to them as they head towards the kickoff of the opening of college football season. Of course, that comes in week 0, but we're not counting that. So our eyes are set forward towards August 31st. Week 1 of college football when it will bust loose. So we're looking forward to that. Looking forward to our guest today, of course, as well. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette will be with us. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star, and an oldie but a goodie, Rick Bozich from WDRB.com, our good friend. Looking forward to talking to each and every one of those peeps as we get throughout today, and welcome everybody onto the Andy Moore Honda hotline as well. Your comments as well if you're following us along by YouTube. Otherwise, listen to our great people out on 97.7 The Ref, ESPN, always the right call down in Evansville, up in the region on 12:30 a.m., 104.7 FM, WJOB, and the only sports station in Fort Wayne, 1380 The Fan. Make sure you keep it tuned right here to all these stations, especially and on 1380. After ISB, you've got the Sports Rush with Brett Rupp. So keep it tuned. We've got more coming here. How's your day starting out? What are you looking forward to? I'm looking forward to talking to all of our guests because we could lots of different things to talk about. Curt Cignetti, did you know he is the 4th highest winningest coach by percentage in football right now? We'll let's see if I can get Nick to pull in some clips from yesterday's football players that met with the media. We'll see if we can get that for you. Justice Ellison is getting married after the season. I found out that little tidbit. He will be the second starter on this team. Well, he's getting married after the season. Curtis Rourke, I believe, is already married now. And I've talked about this, but the only reason I bring that up is because to me, that shows there is a great amount of maturity on this team. Guys that are getting married on purpose, it either shows they're crazy or they're mature, right? Just kidding. No, I'm going with the mature side, that they're mature far beyond my years. I can promise you that. But that just gives you an indication of what Indiana football is looking at as far as their type of personnel. Guys that have mature minds. That's I cannot even talk about how important that is in crucial situations, making plays, doing the right things, making the right calls. It all goes hand in hand, but we'll talk more about that later. Hey, we're going to have our college pick'ems. Don't forget. Our buddy Pete has got that set up. Let me get over to the information that he sent me when we start. Now, the one difference we're going to make this year is in years past, we've just done straight up wins and losses. And We're not doing that anymore. It's going to be, you're going to be using the spread. So, and ironically, it's been a couple of the same guys that have been at the top of the winning board every time we've done it. And congratulations to those guys. But how are you going to be against the spread? We will find out. So, of course, that is on the ESPN format as always. It has been before. Let's see. He sent me the info. All right, the college pick'ems. So the group, when you go to ESPN and you go over to the deal where you have when you can get to the groups, the group is Indiana Sports Beat. Pretty easy to remember that one. Indiana Sports Beat. Password? Signetti24. Signetti24. You have a max of 2 entries, and this is against the spread. It's easy. Just go to ESPN. You go over to the right. There's a fantasy tab. Create a login if you don't have one, and just search for the group. It's a lot of fun. We'll give away some prizes, and it's a way to engage during the season as well. It gives us something to talk about, and looking forward to it. I do okay, but I'm never at the top. And this spread, using the spread this year is going to make things gigantically different. We'll find out where. Oops, I had Pete. Pete says, who was that old lineman that went down with season-ending injury, I guess? How's that going to impact the D? Pete, you got me confused there. If it's an offensive lineman, and rephrase that and ask me again. However, hello to everybody on the Andy Moore Honda Hotline. We appreciate you guys hitting us up already, early and often. Russell says hello to everybody. And Nick Kidwell, apparently. That is, hey, Tony, how are you doing? Nick Kidwell, unfortunately, that's the stuff that's going to happen. But we'll get around to all that as well. Also, while I am thinking about it, please do not, if you're a golfer and you want to have some fun and give to an incredibly great cause at the same time, next week, 1 week from tomorrow, is the Hulls family Never Lose Hoop golf outing at the golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. It's a Thursday, August 22nd, 11 a.m. check-in, 12 p.m. shotgun start. You get lunch provided from Chick-fil-A. And then after the event, you'll have a sit-down dinner provided to you. Nobody does that. So that's a lot right there. But also you'll get a shirt at check-in, free shirt. There are 3 opportunities to make some bank on a hole-in-one. There's a $10,000 hole-in-one opportunity and 2 $5,000 hole-in-one opportunities. The beverage cart will be going around as well. But there will be IU athletes there. I know that Anthony Leal has a team. Luke Goody has a team. Ian Stevens is playing as well. We'll get more names. And let's see, I think, and then of course the silent auction. Brian Haynes is going to get a signed football for the silent auction. There will be IU basketball stuff in there. Just all kinds. It's just going to be a heck of a fun day. It really is, but it all goes to an incredibly good cause, as this benefits area kids with cancer and their families that have been dealing with that. So been going on for over a decade now by the Hulls family, started by JC way back when. So please, if you can help out, or if you just want to be, if you can't play and you'd like to be a sponsor, you can be a whole sponsor. That's only $100. So you can just drop that in, no problem. Let's see. I'm going to have to cut over here and find, there we go. There's the link for you as well. Just go to events.golfstatus.com. That's events.golfstatus.com. Events.golfstatus.com. And then search never lose hoop. Never, it'll pop right up. But and you can sign up as an individual, as a team. It's going to be a blast. Lots of different people out there. You get to hang out with other IU fans, IU athletes, and it's just a great time. So come out and join us and help us support these area kids and their families that have been affected by that horrible disease. How else is everybody doing? Hope that you're doing well, and you've made it halfway through the week. Looking forward to talking to our good friend Dylan Sinn coming up next here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, as well as Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star a little later, and the man, Rick Bozich from WDRB.com after that. Hey, we've got plenty for those of you down in the Bedford area or Bloomington as well. Don't forget the Rusty Gator. Great Cajun cuisine. Stop in and tell them hi. They've got live bands every weekend as well down there. We'll be back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
This segment is brought to you by the Rusty Gator.
$14.33 back, right?
Yep. That is correct. I cannot find any press or media from yesterday.
For IU football?
Yeah.
Did you go to the Indiana football Twitter site? It'll be up there.
Okay. I'm looking on the website. I don't see anything.
Horst is in the house.
No, nothing from yesterday that I'm seeing. All they did was post like a 20-second clip of scrimmage.
That's okay. We've got plenty to keep us busy.
Okay. I will keep an eye out and just still be looking for things just in case if they do upload something. Got about 1 minute.
There he is.
Hello?
I was getting ready to text you. We've got a new producer, as I was making sure everything went through.
Howdy.
Yep. No problem.
Got Nick. We got Nick on the line now.
Nick?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Nick, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Hope to foster a good environment here. I'm trying to make sure, everything works smooth for Jim. I'm still learning, but we'll figure it out as we go. But we got about 10 seconds till we go back.
All right.
This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday, and that means our good friend Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Dylan, busy man you are, I know that, covering Indiana, Purdue, And Notre Dame, you've been able to get to all three of those practices by now, I believe, right?
I have. That's right.
Notre Dame, let's start with them since we don't get to talk about them a ton. Right now, they are a top 10, AP top 10 team, according to the first poll that came out, which means diddly do, to be honest with you. It doesn't mean squat, but it still carries weight. And we'll see what are your thoughts on Notre Dame, where they are, what their expectations are for this upcoming season?
Yeah, the biggest question going into camp for them was whether their quarterback, Riley Leonard, who transferred in from Duke, whether he was healthy. We've seen in camp that he is, which is obviously a huge deal. He's moving around like he's a dual threat guy. He's a very, very good runner. And he has been able to
I'm a dual threat guy.
What they want. Yeah, there you go. Of course, Jim.
I can sing and dance.
Oh, can you? Okay, maybe you should give a little performance for us at some point during the show. He's healthy, which is what they wanted. The problem for Notre Dame is that they are breaking in some new pieces on the offensive line. Both of their tackles were drafted within the first 60 picks of the draft last year, and so they're hoping to find new tackles. They thought one, but he suffered. He's out. So that's going to be an issue for them. They have new tackles, neither of whom has any starting experience. And so we're going to have to see how that plays out, because they've been known for a while for offensive line play, and it's going to be a question of whether that continues this year.
Well, they've got a lot of questions. I mean, it's kind of time for Notre Dame to take a step up. Personally, I think that they get a lot more love just because of what is on the front of the jersey. I talk about that every day now. It's the name on the jerseys mean too much. That's why I hate these early season polls that don't mean squat. We're still weeks away from the first snap, but we already have the teams and where they're ranked. That's malarkey. For one thing, the majority of that is based on last season. And I'll use Indiana as an example. If I was looking at Indiana as the team that they were last season, I'd have them at 17th in the Big Ten as well. But I don't, because that's not Indiana this year. That's nothing about how Indiana is going to be like. And most teams are like that. So that's why these rankings, I'm like, maybe the big guys, you can. It's easy to run Georgia and Ohio State and Oregon and all those guys up there. But after that, there's no way anybody has a clue, in my opinion. Greenbow, Alabama.
It's so difficult now, especially because the teams change so much from year to year. You're trying to forecast what they're going to look like with new pieces in place, right? Like even Ohio State brought in a ton of guys in the transfer portal. Well, they brought in significant pieces from the transfer portal. So a team like Ole Miss, which went 11-2 last year, brought in a ton of guys from the transfer portal. So people think they're going to be good. I agree, but you're forecasting how these pickups are going to pan out. And IU's among those teams, right? They brought in a ton of guys. You're trying to forecast how that's going to affect a team's roster. And it's difficult. It is more difficult than it used to be. And we weren't particularly good at it in the past. Now, I will say I did see a stat that over the last, I think, 20 years or so, the national champion has come from the top 7 of the preseason rankings, I think 18 of those 20 years. So it's one of those things where it's harder down the list, as you said, but the consensus usually gets the best team or the best teams correct. There's usually some level of accuracy there. I do think that the national champion is probably going to come from the top 3 this year, I believe. Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State one of those three teams is going to win the national championship, would be my guess.
One would think, one would certainly think, hey, Michael, how are you? But that's what makes it fun. And this year we have the advent of the 12-team playoff, that is, does that change anything? And that's going to be interesting to see if any of the top teams, what we consider the top four, get knocked off prior to being in that quote unquote Final Four.
Sure.
I don't know that it happens, but the opportunity deserves to be there, and it is finally there, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that the top four teams in the rankings might well not be the top four teams in the playoff rankings, right? Because the way it works is that the top four are all conference champions, right? So the way it works is it's the teams that get the buys in the playoff, the top four seeds, are conference champions. So it's the top four conference champions that get those buys. So obviously the number one team is probably going to be number one because they won their conference championships. So they will probably get a buy. But beyond that, we don't really know. And so it's going to be interesting to see which team that might have been ranked third or fourth has to then go play a playoff game in the first round as like the fifth or sixth seed because they didn't win a conference championship. And I think it's going to play out in a really interesting way. And I'm fascinated by that because I think people are going to be angry about that, I think. And when they realize how that's working, because I'm not sure if people have really kind of wrapped their heads around that yet. And so we're going to have to see how that holds up. But I do think it's interesting because it makes the conference championship races really, really impactful. And I think that's very, very cool for just kind of this iteration of the sport is that you're going to be looking like down the stretch of these seasons, a berth in the conference championship game is going to be worth its weight in gold. And the way these conferences work now, most of them have gotten rid of divisions, kind of like the Big Ten, and are just going with top two, go to the conference title game. And so you're going to have these conference races down the stretch of the season where there's going to be really, really important games all the way in through November that matter in a way that you can't really kind of wrap your head around until you get to that conference championship. So I'm fascinated by that. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, quite frankly.
Absolutely. Now, going to a 12-team playoff almost all but guarantees Notre Dame makes the playoffs every year because it seems like no matter what, Notre Dame, it's as if it's an unspoken rule. Notre Dame has to be kept a part of everything. It's kind of aggravating to me because I'm like, wait a minute, you guys are not winning conference titles. You're not doing anything great. And it's been a while since they've done something great, but yet they're still riding on that Golden Dome name of Notre Dame. And it gives them a push by people. And I just don't get it.
Well, it's because they're not really guaranteed a spot. I mean, they would have to finish in the top 11 basically because the 12th spot was reserved.
I meant theoretically, not
theoretically, yes.
Guarantee.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like the outside of the conference champions, the other 11 or the other spots are reserved for at-larges. So Notre Dame would be an at-large, and that's the thing is Notre Dame in this version of the playoff, they've sacrificed something by not being able to get a bye in the first round because the top four seeds go to conference champions. Notre Dame cannot get a bye, so even if Notre Dame is ranked number one in the country, they would not get any higher than the fifth seed, and they'd have to play in the first round. And so that's something that they're giving up. But they are in the room when this happens. You're absolutely right. And like it's the group that decides this, generally speaking, is the 10 or now 9 conference commissioners and Notre Dame's athletic director. I understand why people are kind of confused by that. But Notre Dame does have an outsized place in the sport still because it has arguably the second or third biggest fan base in the sport, right? That's why they have, that's why they still matter, is because so many people are Notre Dame fans. I think that's part of the reason.
I think that they get an undue advantage in a lot of this stuff simply because of that, because people are thinking of TV numbers and this and that. Whereas if I don't care if it's Purdue or Indiana or Illinois. If you took one of those teams and they had the identical record or maybe a smidge better, they're going to lose out to Notre Dame if it was a decision-making thing. I am completely sold on that.
I mean, I will say that over the last couple of years, Notre Dame wouldn't have made the 12-team playoff either of the last 2 years. They finished, I think, ranked 18th in 2022, and I think 14th last year. So they would have missed out on the playoff each of those 2 years. But they would have made it the previous 5 years, right? Like they were from 2017 through 2021. They finished ranked in the top 12 every year, and they won 10 games each of those seasons, including a couple of 11-win seasons and a 12-win season in 2018. So they've been winning the games. They've won double-digit games 7 of the last 8 years, which is it's one of the better stretches in their recent history. So that's pretty impressive. And I mean, this year, I do genuinely believe that they are a good team. I don't think that they are a national champion level team, but I do think that they are a team that could win an 8-9 game, right? I don't think that would be totally off the table. And so they are recruiting at a level where they are in the top 12 conversation. I think there's no way around that. And yeah, we'll have to see when it comes down to it, if they are right on that bubble, how the committee treats them, because I think that's going to be interesting.
Absolutely. And there are other teams, of course, specifically Purdue and Indiana. Both of them picked last and next to last in the Big Ten. However, I see a big difference I perceive a difference between those two teams. I'm not close to Purdue as being able to be up there and practice and whatnot, but we have Travis Miller on each week, and we'll have him on again this Friday and talk about it more. But Purdue is probably a team I would think. I think UCLA finishes last in the Big Ten this year, ahead of Purdue. But Purdue, I don't know what to expect from them. I know that this is the second year for Ryan Walters. Offensively, they seem to be okay, but their schedule is absolutely brutal. And I think that they've done themselves no favor with this schedule, part of which they can't control, I get, but they're out of their non-conference schedule is just absolutely ridiculously tough.
Yeah. I mean, they have to play Notre Dame in the non-conference, and on top of having to play Ohio State in the season, and it's not something you want, right? Like, I think it's going to be one of those things where for a team like Purdue, which is just trying to bank victories to get to a bowl game, kind of like Indiana, you're going to see them schedule a little bit differently going forward. I don't know if you're going to see that Notre Dame game that much on their schedule anymore, just because the in-conference schedule is so difficult. Notre Dame for them is a historic rivalry. They played them every year up through 2014. Didn't play them again until 2021, and then are playing them again this year. And it's just kind of the way it fell for them is pretty difficult. That they got Notre Dame in this year, where they have a difficult Big Ten schedule as well. I do think that Purdue is actually, they brought in some significant pieces in the offseason. What I like about them is that they are really veteran on the offensive line. I think that last year, a lot of their struggles came from being kind of injury riddled up front. They weren't able to move the ball in short yardage the way they wanted to. It became really difficult for them. And so this year, I think that they've kind of fixed a lot of those issues. They have all Big Ten center Gus Hartwig is back for his 5th year. He's been all Big Ten 4 years. He's one of the best offensive linemen in the league. And then they brought in significant transfers along the line who have started many, many games. And so I think that is going to be a real strength for them. I think that any team that you can say has a strong offensive line is probably not going to finish last in an 18-team league. I do agree with you that it's probably going to be UCLA. Illinois, I think, could fall to that level. Purdue beat Illinois by 3 touchdowns last year. They beat Minnesota by 3 touchdowns last year. I don't think they're going to finish below either of those teams. So yeah, I would expect Purdue to win at least 2 or 3 Big Ten games would be my guess, and be just fine. Whether they get to a bowl or not is a different proposition. We'll have to see. But I think there's a chance, and I've said this before, but I think there's a chance they are a better team than last year. but it doesn't really show in the record because of the schedule. I think that's probably going to be pretty frustrating for a lot of Purdue fans, because I do think that Indiana got a bit of a break with the schedule, but I guess they'll get to show it on the field against Indiana in the bucket game.
Yeah, but how often have you ever said that in your life? Indiana
exactly. That's right. They never. The answer is never.
Exactly. And so the fact to even hear somebody say that, I'm like, huh? What? What is that? Crazy.
Yes.
Speaking of the Hoosiers, some bad news for them, as it's always going to be the case. I don't think there's going to be a team in America that can get through fall camp or whatever injury free, but they lose Nick Kidwell apparently for the season, an expected starter on the offensive line, a transfer from JMU, but hopefully there is some depth there for Indiana. But that's the first little ding to hit, and those are the kind of dings here and there that you've got to negotiate to make it through successful. Those are the teams that either have the most health or the most depth are going to survive to the end. But sad to see for anybody when you're lost for the season, because all that work you put in over the winter, then the spring and summers and then fall. And I hate to see this for anybody, but Indiana is a team that I've been touting. I know that everybody's going to say, well, he's a homer. I believe, and because of the schedule, because of what Cignetti is doing, because of the talent that has come in, because of their wide receiver room, because of their defensive back secondary, they have at quarterback. It's not like they have Joe Montana, but I think that they have in Curtis Rourke, a guy that is extraordinarily mature. He's in his 5th year. He's married. I mean, he's got I'm just saying that's a mind. That sounds like a very calm, mature mind, and there's nothing else you would want at quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as Kidwell goes, he started 34 games. He was a JMU guy. He's one of the many JMU guys that came in. Obviously, it's a significant loss. I don't think there's really any way around that. I think the problem that I see with that particular loss is that there wasn't a whole lot of depth along the offensive line. They basically had enough for 5 starters. They had 5 really good offensive linemen, and then beyond that, they didn't really have a ton. And so they're going to be having some guys who have not had a lot of experience play now in Kidwell's absence, and it's going to be tough. I think there's going to be a hole there, at least for a little while. Obviously, Bob Bostad is one of the best in the business, and he is going to try to create a cohesive unit. He was able to do that last season, although last season he had a lot of continuity from the previous year. This year he doesn't. And so he has a little bit of a tougher task, and that task is now even made more difficult by the fact that you're losing one of your veteran leaders there. So I'm not going to lie. I'm worried about the offensive line. I think it's going to be a work in progress early in the season. I think that is part of the reason the schedule matters, is that there's runway for Indiana here. There's a winnable games early in the year, and that where you can kind of figure these things out, right? And so I do think it's going to be something that you are going to see growing pains with this offensive line now, and we'll have to see how that affects the rest of the offense, because this team should throw the ball. I think that there is really no way around that. They should throw the ball, because not only, as you said, do they have a mature quarterback, they have a great wide receiver core. I think that we can project that pretty safely. I know you're talking, we talked earlier about the perils of projecting how new fits are going to change a roster, how new players are going to change a roster. But IU has 2 of the best receivers in the Big Ten in Elijah Surratt and Donovan McCulley. Those guys are both really, really top line guys. And then they have a significant number of guys with potential and guys with production below them as well. And I think that if you can protect Curtis Rourke, you're going to be able to throw the ball around the yard a little bit. The question now is, can you protect him with an offensive line that has to be kind of rebuilt on the fly here? So I think that is a significant injury to Nick Kidwell. I think it's manageable as the season goes on. Someone is going to have to step up. One of these young guys is going to have to step up. But it is something that is going to hurt early in the year, and they're going to have to figure it out.
We've got Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with us. We've got to take a quick break and come back. We'll talk a little bit more about college football coming up and what else Dylan has been working on here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East, located right off of College Mall Road, 1285 College Mall Road in Bloomington. Great place to catch the game and to grab a meal. Back with more Dylan Sinn right after this.
Segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East.
Yes, back to reality, back to good, no stress.
There we
You
go.
have no idea. You have no idea how much stress doing this show without a producer is.
Yeah.
I have Nick back now. I was going to have a stroke or a heart attack, or both.
That's great.
Sorry.
About 45 seconds.
I know how much time I got. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
The fact that I can even joke right now is amazing. Holy macaroni. Yale football, one of the most impressive resumes in the sport. Well, yeah, but that's 100 years ago, man.
10 seconds.
Beautiful.
This segment is brought to you by Freethink Apparel.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Made it halfway through the week, and it has been an unbelievable week. Dylan, I've been talking about the weather. This has been mind-boggling. July was pretty daggone nice. I mean, for a July. And then so, August, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to get pounded in August. And August comes in like a lamb. We had, unfortunately, the hottest day of the year, it seemed like, last Tuesday. And we had an event down in French Lick for the Corn Ferry Tour Championship Media Day. That's Corn Ferry Tour Championship coming up this fall, but it seemed like it was 2,000 degrees that day. I'm not kidding. It was awful heat wise, but it was awesome being down at French Lick. But man, it's this weather. And it's like I remember when I was in high school and playing football and two-a-days. It seemed like it was an automatic rule that it had to be 100 degrees with 100% humidity during that time. And these football players right now, man, they got to be loving life out there in the mornings where it's cool and crisp, maybe 70 degrees. I'm like, wow, perfect. And I wonder if that football has really, really changed their mindset. I talked about, unfortunately, Nick Kidwell, Indiana losing him apparently for the season. And there's been other teams that have lost some guys, but it not a lot. I think teams are being so health conscious now with good reason. In the preseason, they wear the helmet caps, which I wonder, why would you not wear those in a game?
Yeah. I do wonder what, we saw the other day, Jonathan Taylor from the Colts wore it during the game. Did you see that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, he wore it during the Colts preseason game. He had it on, and they had kind of basically a helmet cover over it. So you couldn't, on TV, you couldn't really tell, but when they zoomed in, you could tell. And it was really hard to notice. And so yeah, he wore it during the game. I think no one was the worse for wear. I don't know if they're legal in games like regular season games in the NFL currently or college. I don't know what the rule is on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if people started wearing them during games. It's I guess the idea is that you have the idea is that it's going to slow you down probably minutely because
well, it's not going to slow the linemen down, and those
exactly
apparently linemen are the ones that they receive more head trauma than anybody because first of all, it's a constant. It's like two rams battering each other every time. And it's like being in a miniature car wreck every time. So and Brian says that I have to look this up, that NFL players can wear the helmet caps in games this season, which I'm all for that. I mean, why you would, first of all, and I remember, like I mentioned playing a minute ago, hitting somebody like leading with my head was never a thought because my neck was always a thought. I didn't want to hurt myself. I mean, there was a reason you were taught to turn your head, to get your head in front, to use your shoulders, to use all that stuff. And I know in the NFL, it's a different deal. Those guys are just out to hit and as hard as they can, but it's just dumb to me. I don't get it. So, maybe this will be a slow return to that. Hell, just give them leather helmets again. They'll stop doing that stuff. One would think they're only do it now. They didn't used to do that. So you give them leather helmets and they won't be doing that. They won't feel as sprite and spry.
Yeah, I do think we've kind of legislated the big spear out of the game. Like guys like kind of diving forward with their head first. That's not nearly as common as it used to be, even 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, because of the targeting rules that have been put in place. Those have had a generally desired effect, right? You're not seeing the enormous kind of lead with the crown of the helmet right into some guy's grill hits that you used to see that were such a big part of the game for such a long time. I think we've done a good job of kind of legislating those out because those are some of the most dangerous ones that can get somebody really, really hurt. And now it is just a question, as you said, of trying to reduce the impact of especially the linemen, like you said, where it's every single play you have contact with the head, and there's really no way to get that out of the game without changing the game fundamentally. And so I think the helmet caps for the linemen would probably end up being, my guess, is the norm at some point. I think that probably comes in as something that people are going to use more often going forward, just to reduce the play-to-play impact of some of those things. And I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, and reading here that I think Jonathan Taylor's either the only or definitely was the first to do it, and especially a running back, it's the same kind of deal. Their point of impact is usually immediate, 4 or 5 yards, and then bam, or it's kind of off to the races and it's a tackle. But absolutely, a running back should be wearing these. I'm surprised this is not mandated in high school.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's kind of been a kind of a meteoric rise for these helmet caps. I don't remember seeing.
Why didn't we invent those, man? Why didn't we get those?
Like it was 2021. I remember seeing, I think it was the first time I saw some of them at practice during like the preseason, and like maybe a dozen guys were wearing them, just to the guys who had head injuries in the past, guys who were trying to be ultra careful. And then there was more of them last year, and then this year basically everyone at practice is wearing them, and now you're going to start seeing them in games. It's been kind of a meteoric rise for these things that no one had ever heard of as of 4 years ago. It's been kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm wondering, since they are allowed in NFL games, why in the world will they not be allowed in college or high school?
Yeah, it might be one of those things where it's just kind of a lag, right? The NFL put this rule in place, and college didn't get around to it, and so maybe they will next year, especially if players wear them in the NFL and seem to like them, and it doesn't really affect the play at all. Probably it's going to be a thing in college football next year. That's the thing with college football, is that it used to be that college football would do something and the NFL would look at it and be like, oh, that's a good idea, and adopt that. And now it's kind of gone the other way, is that the NFL is doing stuff and now college is looking at it and saying, oh, that's a good idea. And the innovation of the sport has kind of changed. Even the style of offense, like the NFL is innovating on offense in a way that college is not. It's filtering down in a way that it used to filter up, which is kind of interesting. So that is kind of a fundamental shift in the way the game is played over the last decade or so, is that ideas are going down rather than up. And I think that's that is significantly different than it used to be. As it used to be, college and even high school was where innovation happened, and then it filtered up to the professional ranks. And now it's kind of filtering downward in a way that we haven't really seen before. And I'm wondering how that's going to change just the way that players are developed and things like that.
Well, per the National Football High School rules, Guardian caps are permitted for usage in both practices and games.
Well, there you have it.
There it is. So that's a major change and long overdue. The helmet kept getting better and better, but all that was doing was making guys braver and braver, I think, to use it more and more as a weapon. So it's good to see that, and hopefully we'll see less and less injuries from that as well. So, all right, we're only two and a half weeks away from kickoff, man.
Yeah,
in college football.
Nuts. Yeah, August 31st.
What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, in terms of the overall landscape, I mean, that's the thing, is I'm looking forward to seeing just how the new Big Ten shakes out, right? Like, I think that it's this year, the new Big Ten is the best conference in the country. I think it's better than the SEC. I think Oregon and Ohio State are the two best teams in the country. I think Georgia takes a slight step back this year. I know they're going to be very good. Don't get me wrong. They're a very good team. I think that the SEC has kind of been coasting for a while on, boy, Alabama and Georgia sure are the two best teams in the country. Don't look at what's below that. I think that Georgia's going to be very good. Alabama, I think, will be good. I don't know how good. And then I think Ole Miss is going to be pretty good, but I think the rest of the conference, Texas should be good. I don't know. I'm not convinced on them, specifically because last year they were so driven by that dominant defensive line, and now you're losing two of the best defensive tackles in the whole country. I think they're going to be good. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they're unbeatable. And so I like the Big Ten a lot. I think that Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State is a great top three. And if Michigan is your fourth best team, I think that you're in pretty good shape. I don't think Michigan is going to be great this year. I think they'll be fine, 9-3 or so. And so I'm fascinated to see that play out. Oregon, Ohio State in Columbus in October, Oregon, Ohio State in Eugene, Oregon in October is going to be an absolute blast. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to the race for this, like the 12th playoff spot, which is going to go to a G5 team. I think that is going to be fascinating. So you're going to have all these teams across the country that are vying for one spot in the lower tier conferences, and that to me is going to be a fascinating thing to follow as the season goes on. So I'm really. But
what if that team is not? What if there's a definite difference between that team and the first team that did not get in?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So over the years, what we've seen is that there's usually at least one or two teams from the G5 who can really, really play, and it's different every year, right? I mean, last year they could have picked either Liberty or SMU for that G5 spot. Generally speaking, and not every year, but generally speaking, the team that because in the past it wasn't a playoff spot, but it was a guaranteed spot in the New Year's Six bowls. Generally speaking, those teams were competitive in their bowl games. I mean, we saw Tulane beat USC 2 years ago, right? Obviously, bowl games are kind of it's what you see, right? It's a kind of a Rorschach test for was this team any good? Because nowadays so many players opt out for bowl games, a little bit difficult to determine. But obviously, Liberty got crushed by Oregon last year, but Liberty had a bunch of opt-outs, and so did Oregon, and so it's a little bit difficult to discern. I do think most years, not every year, and I think that people are going to get mad during the years it doesn't happen, but I think most years the G5 team is going to be pretty competitive. And maybe not win a game, because what you're asking them to do is go on the road and play one of the best teams in the country in the playoff in the first round, and that's obviously going to be a difficult task. I don't think that's going to happen most years, but I do think that most years that team is not going to be embarrassed off the field, would be my guess. And so I do think the whole point of increasing the playoff to 12 teams was increasing access to the playoff for the rest of the sport. That was the rationale we were given, right? And during the 4-team playoff era, it was almost impossible for a G5 team to make the playoff. It had to be an incredibly special set of circumstances, like we saw with Cincinnati in 2021, where not only were they undefeated, not only did they have a great team, but the team that was right below them, the team that finished 5th in the rankings, they had beaten them head-to-head. And so that was the only way a G5 team was going to make the playoff, was in that specific scenario. And they did it. Good for Cincinnati. But I do think that most years there is at least one or two, usually two, G5 teams that are competitive, that can play with the biggest teams in the league and in the land. And I think that it is really fun to not only follow which team that is, but also see them against one of the best teams in the country in a playoff atmosphere. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I think we would sacrifice something fundamental by getting rid of that. I hope that they keep that. And I know there are going to be people mad. I know that the 12th ranked team that is left out of the playoff is going to be.
It wouldn't matter if you had 24 teams, because the 25th team would
exactly. And so there is going to be an enormous push every single year. Why are we letting this team in? Blah 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 blah. Look, it is to increase access for the rest of the sport. Those teams, the team that gets in is probably going to be either undefeated or have one loss. You, team that finished 12th, probably went 9-3. Win some more games. I don't see why we should say that the 6th best team in the Big Ten gets in over the best G5 team. I don't think that that's necessary. I think the Big Ten getting 5 in is perfectly acceptable. It makes the rest of the sport more interested and gives it something to follow deep into the season that affects the national championship race, which is usually not something we've been able to say in the past. I think that really, it makes the sport more fun. This is supposed to be fun. This is college football. It is, in my mind, the most fun sport you can follow. And I think that this is giving more fan bases more opportunities to cheer for a team that has genuine national championship aspirations. I think that is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. What is up next for you, my brother?
Yep, I am continuing my rounds. This week I'm focused more on high schools. We have plenty of high school preview coverage of the football season coming up at the Journal Gazette, journalgazette.net. Obviously, high school football starts next week. We are 1 week away, or basically 10 days away at this point from the start of the high school season. So very excited for that. I will have plenty of preview coverage there. And, of course, I'm covering the Tin Caps as they finish out their season at Parkview Field as well. So plenty busy here in August.
Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal Gazette. Make sure you're giving him a follow, and we love you, brother. We appreciate you. Look forward to next week.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me out. Looking forward to it.
You bet. Dylan Sinn joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We've got lots more coming up, and we will be back with it right after this.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper.
Hit that on 54 for you.
Sweet.
Still may have to, I don't know. I doubt it. Shouldn't have to trim.
No, it should be good. I mean, worst comes to worst, it'll literally be like 10 seconds.
It feels so much better today. It feels so much better. I'm afraid. The one thing you got to get into habit of as well is each segment
Changing the thing.
changing that logo.
Yeah, I just realized as soon as I was coming back in to change.
Okay, it's all
thingy,
habit,
yeah.
man. It's all habit. It just takes a while to soak in and sink in, man.
So who do we have next? Kyle?
Yes. Let's see.
Got about 1 minute.
Okie dokie. Okie dokie. Oh yeah.
20 seconds. All right, in 5.
Segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Appreciate you being with us. Just wrapped up with Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Rick Bozich will be joining us, and hopefully Kyle Neddenriep will be jumping on here with us in a little bit. But football college practice in this is what, week 3? Are we in week 3? Is that right? 1, 2. Yes, we're in week 3, midway through week 3. So basically, we're at the exact halfway point today of fall camp. 2.5 weeks ago, it started. 2.5 weeks from now, kickoff, baby. Game 1 for most college football programs. There's a few that will kick it off in week 0. No calories in that week, I guess. Must be an advantage to keeping light. But Indiana kicking off the season with Florida International. Couple of home games back-to-back, then Western Illinois, and then they travel to UCLA. It's going to be interesting to see how many Indiana fans head west to the iconic venue that is the Rose Bowl. To see Indiana uniform in that stadium is going to be wild. That has not happened since 1968. And against USC and O.J. Simpson, by the way. So the last time Indiana was out in Southern California, they were playing against O.J. I'll just leave that one sit there. So Yeah, don't forget the college pick'em is upon us as well as Pete. I don't think we're going to count week 0. So there's no teams that we really care about, I believe. So don't do week 0 because that one's not going to count, right, Pete? I'll leave Pete in charge of that. But looking forward to it. But this year, don't forget, instead of just being the winner and loser, using the spread this year, we're going to see how that mixes things up. Lots of you got in it last year, and looking forward to it again this year. It's always fun. We'll come up with some great prizes and see who's the best picker. Who thinks who's going to do what this year? It's it's going to be. I know a lot of the IU fans will pick Indiana a lot more often, and that is going to be interesting to see. But we shall. We'll find out. Michael says, if he's not mistaken, wasn't that the first IU game I covered, 1968 Rose Bowl? Oh, no, I was there for the 45 Big Ten championship as well. Don't forget. No, just kidding. Dave Tanis thought that Dave was the varsity football coach then. I guess I'm lost on that conversation. Looking forward to Rick Bozich joining us in a little bit and getting caught up on all things that's going on. Indiana losing a player, Nick Kidwell, yesterday, apparently for the season. Offensive lineman transfer in from JMU. Oregon, Ohio State, definitely the class of the Big Ten this year. Who's going to give either of them a run for their money? Michigan is thought to be there. Penn State is thought to be there. And I'll be honest with you, and that's a discussion with Dylan we didn't get to when he said he thought that the Big Ten was better than the SEC this year. And I'm like, yeah, not so sure about that, because I don't see the depth at the top for the Big Ten right now, with Ohio State and Oregon as those two teams at the top. I think that there's a line there for me, and I don't know what Penn State is going to be like just yet. Are they going to be on top of that line or under that line? Until I see them, I'm going to keep them underneath of that line, but I could be way off on them. Michigan, I definitely think will be underneath of that, so we'll find out how that goes. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star joins us now. If I can get him in there, maybe not. There we go. Hey, Kyle, how are you, brother?
Good. How are you, Jim?
Cannot complain. We're just talking about we are at the dead center point of the preseason for college football, as fall camp started 2.5 weeks ago, and we are 2.5 weeks from kickoff for Purdue, for Indiana, for Notre Dame on the 31st of August. But high school kicks it off a little sooner, and they're already underway. I'll tell you something that we were talking about, perfect to have you on, is the I hate to call them a skull cap, helmet caps. Jonathan Taylor, one of the first in the NFL to wear one in a game. And I was wondering, I'm like, why would they not wear these in a game? And now since I found out that the NFL is allowing players to wear them in a game if they so choose. And the National Football High School Associations also are allowing this. That's going to be decided by the individual conferences or the states. But I would think that I'm shocked that it's almost not mandated, to be honest with you, those helmet caps that now have come out with the little soft cushions on the outside of them. Why would you not wear them?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a cost thing or what what that might be exactly, especially at the high school level, to require it. I would assume that's sort of the, and I'll be out at a scrimmage on Friday, so I'll be on the lookout for that. But I haven't really seen that, through the summer as much. And again, I haven't been to everything, seen every
practices that you've been to. Have you seen teams that have them or wearing them at all?
I haven't noticed that. No.
Surprising.
But again, it could be something I just haven't maybe noticed it as much, or that's a good question though.
You wouldn't miss them.
Yeah.
I mean, they really, I'm sure you've seen them, but they've got like the bubbles that you used to have inside of your helmet. They have on the outside of this little, it's just like I guess it snaps on the outside, but it's like a cloth material, but it has those bubbles on it that just further absorbs the blow. And I'm a little surprised that the NFL is allowing those in games. I highly recommend that they do. And if that's the case, I would be shocked that high schools they won't mandate it for the reason you just mentioned, cost probably. But I'm like, all right, how much could those things cost a piece? This is not like a helmet. A helmet, probably 150 upwards of $200 a piece, maybe more. I don't know, but I wouldn't think these were very much.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I'm not 100% caught up on all that at this point, but yeah, it's a good question, especially looking at we're always talking about safety, especially at the high school level, and I remember when the rugby tackling sort of came from the Seahawks, and then kind of came into the high school realm, and I remember Brebeuf had a tackling dummy that they use as like a robotic. Where they kind of learned how to rugby tackle, and it's interesting how. And at that point, it was really, it's probably been almost a decade now where it was, the concerns about safety of football, and it seems like we've kind of come out of that to us. I mean, there's always going to be a level of safety. Obviously, football more than any sport will have those concerns forever. But we've seen a lot of things happen with the kickoff. The kickoffs changing, and the helmets, like you mentioned, the tackling style, so it feels like we're in maybe a more safe place with football than we've been in a while, which is cool. I mean, because there was real concerns. I would say I'd have to go back and look, but probably was about a decade ago with the future of the sport and what was going to happen. And, definitely I'm biased. I've played football. I love it. So I hope it always continues, because I think it has a real place for young men and women now playing it. And, I hope it always continues on. But there were definitely concerns I had from, gosh, I mean, are we doing the right thing? Are we, what else can we do? And that feels like now we're in a better spot in 2024 than we were a few years ago.
Absolutely. I agree 1,000%. I too played, and I'm like, I couldn't imagine not being able to play that sport. It's still one of the fondest, I look back, some of the fondest memories I have in life, some of the greatest memories. But one thing that I don't recall is I was never trying to spear people with my head, because I was always afraid of hurting my neck. So I'm like I listened to what my coaches said, try to get my head across, use your shoulder, this, that, the other thing. And the NFL guys, it got to a point to where it was just all out hitting. It wasn't tackling. It was just trying to deliver as lethal a blow as possible. And with their head or not, I'm like, they're nuts. They're literally nuts. And they halfway are. And I'm wondering, will this not only not prevent it, but I wonder if having that will increase guys doing that, thinking that they have a little more protection to be able to. But that's a thought. But the rules, the changes, I do hate the college rule of getting tossed, especially on an inadvertent collision with the head. It's like, come on, man. You can't kick somebody out for one infraction. If they're fighting, I get it. So an accidental spear or whatever you want to call it is no different than fighting as far as getting kicked out of a game, which I think it just screws games up, screws teams up. But
yeah, I agree. I don't love that either. I think it sort of goes to my idea of having a common sense official at the scores table for basketball to keep the game moving. It seems like you need a football, like a ref on the sideline saying, because everyone can see at home that wasn't on purpose headhunting type of play. We can all see that, and then you feel like, man, this guy's going to have to sit out. He may have to sit out half the next game, and some of those things. And there are certain players who have a history of doing that, and I think that should factor in also. If you've been in the league or you've been playing college football for years and have never done anything like that, and it's something that looks like an accident, I feel like they should give you the benefit of the doubt on some of that. Obviously, you shouldn't be doing it regardless, but if it's an accident or it's clearly not something he was trying to do, I also from a perspective of running backs get hit all the time with help, so it feels like the receivers are protected, the quarterbacks are protected, the running backs are just getting they're getting the worst of it, in my opinion. Maybe because I played the running back a little bit, I feel that way, but I was like, man, they always are getting hit helmet first, but no one ever calls that against them. So
running backs are the key guys to wear it, and it makes sense that Jonathan Taylor is one of those that is wearing that. Running backs and linemen instantaneously, boom, head-on collision is coming. I remember reading a study a few years back, and the running back is worse because if it's just a straight dive or something like that, well, you're looking at a 5-yard head start before you had that collision. So absolutely, I agree with you 1,000%, Kyle. Looking up these helmet caps, the NFL version is $125, and then the normal version is $70. So it's not. I would think that almost each player would come up with that on their own if they had to. I know I probably would. Go out and cut some yards, man. It wouldn't take long to come up with $70. Your health is worth it. But
that's a good that's a good story idea. Honestly, I'll look into that. I think that's I'm sure there are players who are doing that and maybe just wearing them in practice, and probably money that that they just have on their own. And hopefully maybe programs will go out and be able to do fundraising.
Car wash.
Right.
Always see these car washes, always see these things, whatever's going on. Hey man, nothing more important than getting a Guardian cap. So yeah, give to it if you see it. We're right around the corner from high school football, man. You're closer to it than we are with college. When was it the 17th or the 20th? Or the 16th or the 23rd?
No, it's this week is the scrimmages. So Friday night, everyone has their scrimmage or jamboree. And most teams around here are just two teams playing each other. And yeah, I'm always a little bit sort of, it is. I'm going to definitely go to one. I don't know where yet, but I go to one every year, and it's interesting. It doesn't tell you a ton. I mean, you kind of. Normally the smart coach, they're not out there just playing their ones versus ones, trying to go head to head and beat the other team. But, so you see the number ones play some, but then it's a lot of backups, and it's a smart thing to do. You want to get those guys reps and get them playing, especially the guys who are new to varsity football, and, get them out there playing against a different team. So I get it completely, but from perspective of learning a whole lot, I tend to not think I do learn a whole lot from it, but it is good to get out and see two teams playing each other. I'm probably going to go see somebody. Maybe I'm not even sure yet. I'll take a look and see. But yeah, it's a Friday night will be the scrimmages. Then next week will be the real thing. And there's a lot of really good games for week one out there. So looking forward to getting out and seeing a good one. Probably Ben Davis Cathedral and Westfield and Center Grove are two of the best around here that'll play week one.
Do you think that their five lefts is going to the Fishers Jamboree? That should be a good one. Man, the Jamborees were fun. I got to tell you, I loved it back when I was in school. I went to Floyd Central, New Albany, Jeffersonville, Providence, and I think maybe Clarksville, even though they were smaller at the time, was there. But it was having all 5 of those schools there, all 5 rivals, even though you were just playing 2 quarters, it was just you're in the uniform finally after going through 2-a-days and all summer and all that crap. It was awesome. But yeah, those are 2 big time games to start the season, man, and important to all those teams.
Oh yeah, and Ben Davis. I was talking to I'm doing some preseason stuff still, and talking to Mark Zachary yesterday from Ben Davis, and he's like, "Man, I'm so tired of watching Cathedral film from last because they played each other last a regional last November, and it was cold. It was a really cold night, and and it's just going to be so different. I'm sure it'll be hot and muggy and everything on next Friday, but yeah, I think everyone's sort of like to the point of like let's play some games here. So looking forward to it. It feels like it's about that time, and it's always fun. The start of a new school year, the start of high school football kind of officially kicks things off.
Absolutely, and we'll look forward to it. Is anything new that you've got out right now that leading up to that?
Yeah, speaking of, we've got our new our Indy area anyway. Preseason power rankings just came out this morning, so people can look for that. I did also our super team, which our defense came out today. So some great photos and video. We did some fun videos with all the players, and so people can look for that this morning. The defense is out today, and then tomorrow morning will be the offense, which there's actually more offensive players, which is just kind of the nature of it. But yeah, so those are always fun to do. Fun for me to kind of get to know the players a little bit better in those settings, and so people can look for that as well today and tomorrow.
Looking forward to it. Make sure you check it out as well at the Indy Star. Kyle Neddenriep keeping you up to date on everything going on in the state with high school sports. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you greatly.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
You bet. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow. And up next, the man Rick Bozich joins us. We're back with that and much more right after this.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville.
Rick is on Temu.
I'm on what?
Temu.
What's Temu?
Well, most people would love you just for the fact that you don't even know what that is. That's awesome. It's just some dumb Chinese site that you order all kinds of stuff from that I am as guilty as anybody from ordering from.
Is it like uniforms and stuff that look like authentic, but they're not, and they cost like 20% of the price?
No, it has nothing to do with sports. It's just like chairs or canopies or solar lights, just anything you can imagine. It's kind of crazy, this stuff that they have.
And it's trustworthy?
A lot of people use it. I use it.
Really?
I don't have a TikTok account, but yet I am. So for those that they can't get via TikTok, I guess they're getting the rest of us on Temu. TEMU.com. Yeah, that would do it. I bought a bunch of stuff and it works. My solar lights outside look awesome. I'm like, hey. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay.
2.5 weeks away, baby.
What time is that Florida International game?
At about 1 minute.
Oh, that's a good question. $3:30. I should have known that. It's on BTN. I remember that.
BTN.
And then they have a night game the next week.
Friday night, right? Isn't it Friday night?
Oh, is it a Friday? Yeah, I guess since they have to travel to UCLA the following week, which
30 seconds. Ten.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper.
Hey, welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate you immensely. Jim Coyle with you as always, and joined by our favorite Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Rick, it is almost upon us. We're dead center of the fall camp for college football, having started at the beginning of August, and we are dead in the middle. 2.5 weeks in. 2.5 weeks away from kickoff of week 1. Indiana opening up with Florida International. Who does Louisville open up with?
They open up at home against Austin Peay.
And let's see, Purdue. I'm trying to think. I forget who they open with. That's the only team that I can't remember that they play almost, because it gets rough for Purdue fast, with non-con games at Oregon State and home against Notre Dame.
They got to go to Oregon State? Wow, that's a long trip.
Yeah, they've got to go to Oregon State and then come home and take on Notre Dame. Or is it take on Notre Dame and then go to Oregon State? I can't remember.
Purdue opens against the Sycamores.
That's right, Indiana State. So that ought to be a nice little practice game for them, to get them. That's going to be the easiest game on their schedule by far. They don't have a lot of easy games after that, or not. I should never say easy within the conference, but
well, you know what? They've lived the life in the Big Ten West for the last decade. So
exactly. It's time to face the music, baby. Indiana getting a little reprieve from that. And Kentucky, I know that you cover them as well. What are their prospects in the SEC? With SEC having 9 teams in the initial AP Top 25 poll.
Yeah, I think their pick. The SEC has gone away from divisions totally. It's just one 16-team league now. I think it is. Might be 18. I can't keep track. I think they're picked 11th. And the problem is, as you mentioned, it was 9 teams actually in the top 20 of the AP poll. Fortunately for them, they only play, I think they play 4 ranked teams, 4 really good ones, top 12 teams. They got Georgia at home, and then they got to play at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, and at Texas. So those will all be hard games. So I think people are thinking Kentucky in the 6 to 8 win range. That's where they're at, but they do have questions. They're at quarterback. They've got 2 guys out of the portal. One was Vandergriff, who was a backup at Georgia the last 3 seasons, hardly saw the field at all. And then they have that kid from Owensboro, Kentucky, who bolted, cut out in his senior year of high school and went to Rutgers and started the last couple of years. Gavin Wimsatt, I think he actually beat Indiana once or twice. More of a runner, though, than a passer. So Kentucky's got a really good defense. That'll be their deal. But against the question will be how much they'll be able to score against good teams.
Yeah, we'll see. Notre Dame is ranked 7th, but this first poll doesn't mean a whole lot to me. To me, it's easy to put Georgia and Ohio State and Oregon and the other teams at the top. It's just Ole Miss, number 6. The top 10 is basically just the SEC and the Big Ten. 8 of the 10 teams are from those 2 leagues. Florida State at number 10. And let's see, who else is Notre Dame, the independent, at number 7.
Right. Because Clemson's no longer the flavor of the month. Clemson's this is the lowest. This is their worst preseason ranking, I think, since like 2015 or 16. They're going the wrong way.
They weren't, but they weren't as good as their rankings last year.
No,
and that's a problem for the ACC. They don't have a bell cow team right now. Clemson was it for so long, and even when it was Clemson, Louisville was right there, right, knocking on the door. You know, you've got older programs like Miami who have just not been able to recapture that glory. They're kind of like the Nebraska of the Big Ten. They've not been able to reignite that fire. And the ACC needs that desperately because they don't have, for someone fighting for TV rights and all that, they don't have much to show.
You're right. I mean, they've been counting on Miami to be the big dog in the ACC for as long as they've been in the league. And you know how many times they've been in the ACC championship game?
Once.
One. And they lost, which is unbelievable. And this year, everybody's on the Miami bandwagon. If you look at the polls, they're consistently a top 25 team, which is interesting because they were only a 7-6 team last year, but they went big in the portal. They got the quarterback, I think, from Washington State, and they got a running back who was good somewhere like Texas Tech or something. But Miami is one of those teams that always gets the hype early in the year, and they've underachieved for quite a while, and they're paying their coaching staff big money. Mario Cristobal's making like $8 or $9 million a year. So there's a lot of pressure on them to deliver, and I think they play their opening game at Florida, and there's a coach who's really on the hot seat, Billy Napier. I checked Florida. Florida plays 8 top 25 teams, the most of anybody in the country. Imagine that.
That's bull. That's like Indiana back in the days of being in the Big Ten East, baby.
They're playing 8 top 25 teams because they play 6 in the SEC and they play Miami and Florida State. So Florida's we'll see if Billy Napier can survive that schedule.
Well, and speaking of that, what I just mentioned, I was looking over that. As of right now, Indiana only scheduled to play 2 top 25 teams out of the 12.
Is that Ohio State and Michigan late in the year? Yeah.
Yes.
It's a lot different. I mean, think about it. Last year it was Ohio State out of the blocks.
Oh, it's 5 out of 7 years. It was either Ohio State at Iowa or something crazy. But now
got to take advantage of it, though. I mean, they got to come out and they got to win the first 2 games impressively, I think. You've got, I don't know what the numbers are. I haven't seen any stories that people written about what the ticket situation is. I've heard Scott
10% increase. Jeremy Gray was on with us yesterday, and he said there's been a 10% increase in season ticket sales.
Right. So they're going to have people that are, saying, all right, I'm going to take a look at this. I'm going to see if I like it. And can't have a game like they had against Akron last year.
No.
They need to win these games especially the second game, which is the game they bought their way out of Louisville to play. When you play Western Illinois, you need to beat them by 4 touchdowns or so.
And I think that Kurt Cignetti, wouldn't probably acknowledge it that way, he acknowledges that just because of his nature, but just winning is all I think what he cares about, getting there and not just barely winning. I mean, winning by a show of strength. I think that they need to win the UCLA game. Otherwise, you can't beat the teams you're supposed to beat and not beat the teams that you could beat. You have to beat some of the teams that you could beat and somebody that you weren't expected to beat, in my opinion.
I mean, when you look at their road game, UCLA, I'm not saying it's the most winnable road game, but it's one of the more winnable road games. The only factor that negates it is the distance of the travel and the time change and stuff. But that's what good programs do. They go on the road and win. But
Rick, what changed my mind
when you watch these games, you want to see them against teams that aren't Big Ten teams to be physically dominant on the line of scrimmage and run the ball with confidence and with authority, where people can watch the play on the offensive line and say, yeah, they're pushing these guys back and they're imposing their will. That's the thing that was alarming about Indiana the last part of the Darren Hiller thing, was the offensive line was getting no push on the running game and was barely holding on at times in the passing game, and that's why the quarterbacks took as many hits as they did. And I'm talking about Tuttle, and I'm talking about Penix, and I'm talking about who was the other kid? The other kid that threw the ball and got hit quite a bit right before Penix.
You had the dude that got hurt. That dude that got hurt at
the kid from
Michigan
Cincinnati
State,
who ended up at Northwestern.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, Patrick Ramsey.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah. Luckily he was tougher than a $2 steak. I mean, he got pounded a lot. But yeah, they didn't have that kind of guy. But I hopefully that they're not going to need that. And their offense is expected to be a much more diverse, multi-dimensional offense. I mean, Kurt Cignetti throws the ball, but it could be to a running back. You don't know who it's going to be. He really spreads it out. When I looked at some of the offensive numbers, and I mentioned this before, his tight end last year had as many touchdown receptions as his top 2 running backs had combined. Right. So that means that it's getting spread out. That means there's wide receivers are getting the ball. The tight ends getting the ball. The running backs are getting the ball. You don't have a running back piling up 20 TDs because every time they get down to the red zone, that's what they're going to do. I think that's an advantage because you don't know what they're going to do. And I think that's going to be a great thing for this offense, but they've got to show it. And winning at UCLA would really open up eyes. And I'm glad I took the over on wins before that UCLA game, because that's going to change.
What it was 5.5, then it went down to 5. Is it gone back to 5.5? I don't know. I look at that stuff occasionally.
I got it at 6 personally, but that's because I got it at plus 100 instead of at minus whatever. You can actually get it, I think, at whatever you want. To be honest with you, it just would change the odds, whatnot. But I just think that anybody that believes that the over and under for this team and this schedule is 5, you're missing some stuff. You're not paying attention to all that they have done, all that they have added, their schedule, and the teams. 7 out of the 9 Big Ten teams they play this year are against a team that has a coach in his first or second year as well. So the Big Ten must be the most turned over league in the country as far as coaches.
Well, we've talked about this before. It's really hard. It's always hard to analyze before the season, but it's even more difficult now than it used to be because A, as you mentioned, so many different coaches, but B, the rosters are so different. You used to know who was going to be on a team, and you could look at who the young players were when they had been recruited and what they were thought to be and at the recruiting class. But now it's so transfer portal heavy that some teams can make a big jump more than you expect them to make because the players they got are good players and they fit in at their new system. Like Michigan State, it's a total wild card. But the Oregon State coach came, and I'm sure he brought a bunch of Oregon State players who were good players at Oregon State and Michigan State, which had been not very good the last couple of years. If they were a surprise team, that wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be, I think this is going to be a fun year, especially in the Big Ten, because while there's not a lot of strength at the top and right now for me, other than Ohio State and Oregon, there's a line, and Penn State is the next team that I don't know. Are they over that line or are they under that line? Right now I've got them under just because I don't know. Michigan there as well because of all the turmoil they're dealing with. And then after that, I think there's just a bunch of teams, and Indiana's in that bunch, but I don't know who's going to go where. But I think it's going to be a fun parity year for Big Ten football.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Penn State because I was looking at the over and under lines the other day, and I thought I saw that Penn State was 10.5, which was like, wow, that means if they lose 2 games and you bet the under, then I mean, I don't remember Penn State. They always throw one clunker in every year and lose a game that you don't expect them to lose. And their schedule is such in the Big Ten that they're going to play 2 or 3 tough games. But I was surprised to see their over and under was at 10.5.
Yeah, I saw that too. And that puts a lot of pressure on Tom Allen. Last year, before he arrived, didn't they have the number 1 defense in the country?
I think they did for part of the year. They've always got really good linebackers and defensive backs for sure. So yeah, I haven't heard much out of Tom Allen in spring camp. Is he doing many interviews?
You know what? Most coordinators don't. Indiana was doing that previously on Mondays. I don't think that's going to be the case going forward this season, as far as getting to speak to the coordinators, which will kind of suck if that's the case, but we'll wait and find out. I'm not sure how that is. But
didn't Indiana have some bad news last night? The offensive line out for the year.
It's Nick Kidwell. Unfortunately, the JMU transfer. Gosh dang it! You hate to see that before he even gets to take a snap. It's like, gee whiz. But that happens to every team. Virtually, you're going to lose somebody. Minimizing that is the key. Trying to stay healthy. And I know that Indiana, like so many other teams, are doing so many things to try to stay healthy. But in this game, there's only so much you can do. Hell, you can Michael Penix, when his last knee injury, he had slowed down and was just easily gliding on the sideline and just happened to take a bad step. Hell, he can do that out running on a sidewalk someplace. And so it's a shame to see. And there have been guys that who was it that went down? It was completely non-contact here not too long ago. A big loss for someone. I can't remember, but it reminds me of Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not laughing at him, but it was a complete non-contact injury. And geez, he was out for what, 2.5 years? It took him to get back.
Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater was in the pocket with the Vikings and planted in. Had the, I think it was a compound fracture in his leg, and never really was the same after that.
No. Hey, Rick Bozich from WDRB.com is with us right now. We've got lots more coming up. Brought to you by the Ugly Grouper down on Anna Maria Island, Florida. Whether you're already in the area or will be, make sure you stop by. Tell them we sent you and said hello. They've got great food, including locally sourced seafood, your favorite cocktails and craft beers, live music every day. Back with more, including with Rick Bozich, right after this.
Segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper.
I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee.
No, I think I'll Hello.
Howdy.
Yes. Oh, I was just saying. What was I going to do? I was going to change that to Fresh Fork. So you been going out to Louisville practices?
Well, they start closing them this week, but I've been to 2 or 3. Yeah.
That's kind of soon.
You know how it is these days. But I'm going out today. They're having players available at 11:30.
The sheer fact that we even know about Nick Kidwell's injury is a sign of changes at Indiana, I think.
How would Pete Thamel be the one to find that out?
Those guys just got contacts, but they also have no worries. They're not going to have a credential jerked. Because I mentioned the other day, in years past, if you even breathe the word injure, if you could even have to finish the word, and boy, you could lose your credentials.
Really?
Oh. Yeah.
Got about 1 more minute.
It was a hush-hush
Because of that's the way Tom Allen was?
Yep.
It's just weird that a ESPN national guy would break a story on an IU football nobody knows who he is, lineman.
I think that they're keeping an eye on Indiana. I really do. Also,
30 seconds.
If you add in the fact about Juju Lewis, which, that chatter that's popped up here this week. I've been banging that drum, baby, for 2 months.
Ten.
This segment is brought to you by the Fresh Fork in Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. We've got you halfway through the week, and it's all downhill from now. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com joining us. And Rick, we're talking about college football as we're 2.5 weeks away from kickoff, man, week 1. I'm not counting week 0. But a lot of chatter this week, again, involving Indiana and Juju Lewis. And I've tried to tell some people along the way that, man, Indiana is in this conversation. I mean, they are deep in this conversation, and more someone else from another an outlet has now come out and said that he believes that Indiana is a slight favorite. And for a national guy to say that about such a highly ranked quarterback, that would never happen in any other lifetime.
No, I'm trying to think who's the biggest name recruit
Gunnar Kiel.
But
he never made it to Indiana.
No, he never made it to Indiana. I mean, heck, just a few years ago, there was a 3-star recruit from Texas that they, wasn't even a top 50 recruit.
Josh Hoover.
Josh Hoover and burned him on signing day by flipping to TCU. They've usually had to kind of make it up as they went. Nate Sudfeld, kind of fell into their hands and became a really good player. But I think he's the guy they got when they didn't get Keel. Roberson, I guess, was a decent recruit, Trey Roberson, but he was undersized. Antoine Randall, they got him because they were more willing to let him play quarterback. A lot of schools just wanted to let him play receiver, but I guess you'd have to even go back to the Mallory era when it was Dave Schnell and Chris Ditto who were the big name quarterbacks. But this is different. Those guys, the coaching staff has had a relationship, especially Sunseri, since he was a young kid. I think in middle school or even elementary school. He's gone to the camps. He's met him. They've known him. They've invested in him. They trust him, and seems pretty likely now he's doing a decommit from USC. USC's recruiting other quarterbacks. Auburn went after another guy. It's just a matter now of whether he wants to, come to Indiana, because I'm sure other programs are going to try and jump in there too. It's a long way to go till December when you actually sign on the dotted line.
Absolutely. But the sheer fact that Indiana is in this conversation is mind-boggling. Yeah. It's crazy, but it shows that this stuff is real. And I hope this ends up happening, just because there's a few national guys that I said this to, and they all but laughed. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. So we'll find out. But
you got to pick some spots and get involved with guys like that. In recruiting, you're not going to get all of them anyway. And when you're Indiana, you're going to get even less than most schools get. But as long as you pick spots where you legitimately have some kind of an edge, or you feel like you have some kind of an in, it's wise to do that, because that's the only way you're ever going to get guys like this. Otherwise, I mean, if it's a guy where everybody knows he's going to Ohio State or Notre Dame or Alabama, then yeah, you're wasting your time. But if it's a guy that you think, because of a relationship that your coaching staff has with him, that you have a chance to get him to to be the kind of player to come to your program, then you should do it. And that's the thing. It's got to be the right kind of kid who understands what he's coming into, that he'll be looked at as sort of, the foundational piece of a program. But the plus side of it is, if you actually do get him, you would think he'd be able to get a few other recruits to come along with him who would want to play with him.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. And the fact that Indiana boasts this very, very highly touted wide receivers room, possibly the best in the Big Ten, can't hurt. And he sees that they're serious about making sure all these slots are filled. Since he's probably going to, he won't make his decision until December, you think?
No, I mean, I think he'll make a decision before then, but he can't sign anything till December. I mean, you can commit, but you can change your mind. And
another reason that it's very, very important for Indiana to have a good season. I think that their season, how they do, is very important to this. They can't go out and I don't think and go 6-6 or 5-7 and that be looked upon as, that's a place I want to go. But you never know. Again, a lot of times these guys are like, oh, I can make the difference.
Yeah. I mean, and when you bring him in, it's got to be a game when there's a crowd and there's an atmosphere and he feels like he's doing something that matters. But to me, the overriding factor is, the Sinceri's got a phenomenal relationship with him, and it sounds like Cignetti does too. And they've been working on this probably every day since they took over at IU, because this just didn't start in the last week. We've been hearing about this kid since last winter, when he was already committed to USC. That the first thing that we heard was, he might give Indiana a visit. And I was like, sure, okay. Quarterbacks from Georgia who are going to USC, they visit Indiana all the time. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of your latest pieces you have out is about this very situation with can Indiana and Cignetti really land a top 10 quarterback. And in actuality, he was the number 1 ranked quarterback in the 26 class.
Correct.
He has moved up to the 25, so that just moved him a little bit. But I just put him in that same group. I just call him the top quarterbacks. He's one of the best in the country, obviously, and for Indiana to go up against Lincoln Riley and UCLA, or USC rather, that's huge. Auburn, that's huge, and to win a recruiting battle, a straight up recruiting battle against these kinds of programs in the first year, that would be just gigantic for that program.
Yeah, it would be. And it gained credibility this week because the guy from 24/7 is the one who said he thinks Indiana, he'd pick
national
Indiana
guy
at this point. Yeah, a national guy, not a local guy. So that gave it more credibility, somebody who actually studies recruiting for his job. And the fact that the kid has already visited and we know about, the relationships, and I think people have seen behind the scenes who these other programs are recruiting at quarterback, and we'll see if it actually happens again, but it doesn't hurt to have your name associated with them for as long as you can, because I think it's at least made some other kids look at Indiana in ways they wouldn't look at them before.
Absolutely. Another program that is in that upper echelon list for the services of Juju Lewis is Dion and Colorado. And knowing that Shedeur Sanders is going to be gone, one would think, oh man, that's a perfect hole for him to go to. But I'm still not sure that Sanders has shown that they're going to develop guys just yet. There's not enough proof in the pudding just yet. And they started out like gangbusters last year, but they came to, as Diana Taurasi said, reality is coming, and it did quickly.
Yeah, I mean, people forget they finished 4-8, and people forget they led FBS in the most players that transferred out. And I don't know if you watched that clip of his press conference over the weekend.
Again,
but it was pretty
like 2
hostile.
years in a row.
Yeah. He's into it with the media, and a lot of people don't even think he'll be there next year. and we'll see. I don't know. I wouldn't be afraid of Colorado in terms of recruiting against them. Auburn would be much more dangerous. It's much closer to his house.
Yes.
Where he's from Carrollton, Georgia, which is on the west side of Atlanta, and that's an SEC program, and Hugh Freeze is a good coach. So we'll see.
The one thing he does, but he would probably be, without question, the number one guy if he came to Indiana. He goes to Auburn. He's going to have a battle without question.
Right. Let's not ever forget, though, the number one factor in all of this. What's the NIL package, my friend? That's what it is going to be way heavily on the scale.
And Auburn, without question, is probably miles ahead of Indiana in football NIL. But
you think so?
I don't know that Indiana has to match it from an NIL standpoint. I think you just have to be in the neighborhood, because there's something for comfortability for the player, a relationship with either Sunsery or whomever it is on the other side of the staff, at Auburn, whether it's Hugh Freeze or the quarterback's coach or whatever. But it comes down to a comfortability, because he's still looking forward. He's looking to a bigger payday in the NFL.
Yeah, no question about it. I don't know. It'll be like you mentioned earlier. Let's see what the offense looks like this year. Let's see. And I agree with that, Brian, that Indiana finally serious about football. About 20 years too late, but better late than never. Let's see how they use the quarterback. Let's see how they play. Let's see what the packages look like. Because the other side of the coin is, Curtis Rourke's out of there after this year. Taven Jackson, didn't he play okay in the spring game? But it sounded like Cignetti wasn't as pleased with the way he played in the scrimmage. But Cherry's supposed to be a good quarterback. I don't think he's going to step aside just for some kid to come in from Georgia and take his job. So they got people at quarterback.
And you can't have guys that do that. You have to have guys that will fight, even if they end up second. If your guys are not fighting, then you're not getting better, and
I agree.
They're not getting better. So
that's the way it is at Notre Dame and Penn. They're going to recruit over your head every year, and if you don't like it, the only thing you can do about it is play better and beat them out, or go somewhere else. And guys do go somewhere else now, because when you go to the NFL, they're not going to say, well, okay, you're good. We're not going to recruit anybody behind you, or we're not going to sign anybody behind you because we're going to give you this job. It doesn't work that way.
Absolutely. What's next for you, brother?
Well, I'm going out to Louisville football practice in the next hour to do some interviews. Just getting ready for football season to start. Nothing other than that. Not a whole lot of basketball going on. The White Sox finally won a game. Well, they won a game last week, but they beat the Yankees 12-2 the other night. Then they lost
the Yankees. How can it feel to be the Yankees and lose 12-2 to the White Sox?
Well, it didn't feel good for their fans. I saw on social media that they were blowing them up. But Soto hit 3 homers last night, so everybody's happy again.
All right. Well, that's good. Congratulations to all the White Sox fans. I appreciate your
all 7 of us.
Something about Chicago and baseball, man. They just kind of just rotating all that torture. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Make sure you're giving him a follow and keeping up with all the content he puts out. We've got, it's been a fun day. Thanks to Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star, and, of course, Rick Bozich, who we just wrapped up with there from WDRB.com. Brian thinks that the Yankees got drunk before the game. Probably not. They may have played like it, though. We're back tomorrow to do it all again. Shannon Griffith will be with us. I can't even remember who, Chris Denary as well. We'll see about getting I'm going to try to get Mitt Winter on. Now, we've had him on a few times before, sports attorney, as there are more and more multi-year NIL deals now, which to me is just, it is crucial that happens for NIL not to destroy the transfer portal thing with that inability to be held down. Thanks to you guys. Without you, we've got no reason to be here. We have no reason to be here each and every day, and we appreciate you. Nick, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.